Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. If the SEC could be won based on swag alone, South Carolina would be an immediate contender with Shane Beamer as their new head coach. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And another difficult schedule and a roster that needs a lot of work may prove to be a very difficult first year for Beamer in Columbia. So guys, again, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here to break down South Carolina's schedule and record for this 2021 college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. Make sure to go sign up for those expert picks before the season starts. Those can all be found on thegridironexpert.com. Again, the link down in the description. And make sure to go sign up over on PrizePicks. We will become your own personal consultant if you use that link or our promo code GRIDIRON over on PrizePicks, one of the best fantasy sites in the country. So make sure to go play that today and go sign up for that today. So let's take a look at South Carolina, a team that has really struggled over the Will Muschamp era. Let's be completely honest here. It was obviously time for a change from the Gamecocks. The days of Steve Spurrier were long gone. The days of contending for SEC East crowns and being ranked at one point number 3 in the country, those days were long gone. And things felt very stagnant in Columbia. It didn't feel like this program was ever going anywhere. So they let go of Will Muschamp, and now Shane Beamer comes in, and within a few months seemed to revitalize this fan base, seemed to bring some energy back into the football program, and they haven't even played a game yet. But he's young, he's energetic, he's passionate, he's a brilliant mind, and he's going to pan out very well in Columbia. But you may not see those results coming in 2021. It may take a little bit of time. We take a look at the offense. We all know the workhorse for South Carolina is going to be their running back, Kevin Harris. This guy carried South Carolina last year. Over 1,100 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. The Gamecocks as a whole averaged 167.9 rushing yards per game. So we know he's going to be the guy they want to use. Why wouldn't you? Maybe, arguably, the best running back in the SEC. The problem is he needs help. He cannot win all these games by himself. So what's South Carolina going to do? They're going to turn to their quarterback in Luke Doty. Threw for 405 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions last year. Very limited time, obviously. South Carolina averaged 187.2 passing yards per game. That number has to increase. That number has to improve. Doty's game has to improve. He, of course, we assume will be the starter in 2021. And when you look at the talent that he has around him, there's not much. Nick Muse is back as their top pass catcher. He's back at tight end. But when it comes to wide receiver, there's not really a big-name wide receiver that stands out for South Carolina. And that's a scary thought. There was no really big top wide receiver that kind of separated himself from the pack last year. So Doty's quickly going to have to build chemistry with his pass-catching core because Kevin Harris simply can't do it all by himself, even though he will be option number 1. When you look at the defense, another area that needs a lot of work, South Carolina allowed 36 points per game last year. They gave up 195.4 rushing yards per game last year. And when you look at this team, guys, there are some bright spots, especially along the defensive line. You got a guy like Aaron Sterling up there. You've got Kingsley Enagbari up there, guy that had 6 sacks last year. So defensive line, I might even say slightly the linebacking core, but defensive line especially, very strong for South Carolina. That's going to be their strength on defense. To me, the biggest concern is their secondary. They lost 5 defensive backs to the NFL or to transfers, but they do have R.J. Rodriguez, so they get to have one familiar face back there. But the secondary is the major area of concern. The rushing game was bad last year. Could be the other way around this year where the secondary and the passing defense could struggle at times. So we take a look at the Gamecocks, guys. You take a look at the schedule, what Shane Beamer's up against in his first year in Columbia. Obviously, it's a favorable schedule for the most part. There are lots of winnable games on here where a bowl game seems like it could be a possibility. But that might be a little far-fetched. So let's go ahead and break it all down. We think they will beat Eastern Illinois, 1-0. And I do think they will beat Eastern Carolina or East Carolina, although I will say that's no slouch. This is a game where South Carolina could very well lose to the Pirates. ECU returns 20 starters. They seem to be improving every year under Mike Houston. They averaged 173.8 passing yards per game. Holton Ahlers is back at quarterback. One of the top quarterbacks, I think, in the American Athletic Conference. So he's going to really test this South Carolina secondary. Again, one that we mentioned is a little suspect, has some issues there. But one problem is ECU allowed 201.3 rushing yards per game. That's a field day for Kevin Harris. The game might be on the road, but I'm going to give the edge to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks, a team that I think is bigger, more physical, especially up in the trenches. But don't be surprised if ECU hangs in this game and maybe even pulls off the upset. We're going to give South Carolina the win, 2-0. We, of course, think they're going to lose to Georgia. I don't know if there's a team in the SEC East, especially, that can take down Georgia this year. As we mentioned in our Georgia video, they're pretty much going to run the table, as we think, with the exception of maybe that Clemson game, which is going to be their most difficult test up until the SEC championship and maybe the playoffs. But I mean, Georgia guys are just in a league of their own. South Carolina lost 45-16 to the Bulldogs last year. Georgia had the number one rushing defense in the country. That means Luke Doty's going to have to win the game through the air, and win it with who? Who's going to be his threats? Nobody. And not to mention that Georgia has one of the better secondaries in the conference too. Games in Athens, South Carolina wins. Or Georgia wins. South Carolina drops that game. 2-1. They then take on Kentucky. And we're going to break it down at the end of this video, guys. A handful of games that we really feel could be potential toss-up games. Games that one or two plays go the Gamecocks' way, they win. And this is one of those toss-up games for me that we do have South Carolina losing to the Wildcats. They fell to the Wildcats 41-18 last year. They're playing the number one rushing defense in the country in Georgia on September 18th. They're then going to turn around and play the number one passing defense in the SEC in Kentucky. Think about that. So two elite defenses in back-to-back weeks. Yes, the game is in Columbia, but that's never bothered Kentucky before. They've won 6 of the last 7 against the Gamecocks. Their defense is going to be stout once again, all 3 levels. They have a great rushing attack with Chris Rodriguez. They've got a new quarterback in Will Levis trying to find some more balance on offense. I like Kentucky across the board, guys. This is a very dangerous team, I feel like. And I feel like South Carolina is still trying to find their bearings, trying to figure out what they're going to do. Kentucky, to me, is in a better shape, and the Wildcats come on the road and get this win. I do believe South Carolina remains at home, and they beat Troy 3-2. Don't overlook Troy, though. East Carolina and Troy, guys, are 2 teams that could really hang with the Gamecocks, could give them a difficult challenge. Troy, an excellent offense. Lots of returning starters on offense, led by a great offensive mind in Chip Lindsey. I think home field advantage plays a big key here, though, and the defensive line for South Carolina, again, does the job. So 3-2 for Shane Beamer and his Gamecocks. They then travel on the road to Tennessee. And I will tell you this, I think these 2 teams are about even. Last year, Tennessee was a nationally ranked team to kick off the year, and they barely beat South Carolina, 31-27. Now Tennessee is dealing with a new coach in themselves with Josh Heupel. Brand new offensive scheme. Have questions everywhere offensively. Have questions everywhere defensively. But a lot of people are very optimistic that Heupel is going to bring some energy and bring his offensive style that he ran so well at UCF and bring it to Tennessee. That may be so, but it might not happen in year 1. But the moral of the story, guys, is why I do see these teams as being very, very even across the board. Each has their strengths and weaknesses. When I look at 2 toss-up games, when I look at 2 teams that I feel are very even, I look for the one edge that they have, and it's going to be Tennessee with home field advantage. I think Neyland Stadium, to me, is the difference maker in this game. This might be, with the exception of Georgia, obviously, the most hostile environment that South Carolina will have faced up until this point. And I do think that by October 9th, Josh Heupel and Tennessee are not necessarily finding their groove, but they're going to be way better off at this point than they would be in week 2 or week 3. Tack on home field advantage on top of that. It's another close game. South Carolina nearly pulled off the upset last year, but I do think Tennessee gets this win. I do believe the Gamecocks beat Vanderbilt 141-7 last year. Might be a similar result this year. Vanderbilt in the worst position, arguably the worst team in the SEC, and Shane Beamer is going to get his first conference victory with South Carolina. First conference victory with South Carolina. They are 4-3 entering October 23rd, 2 wins away from a bowl game. But when you look at the schedule, the back half, how difficult it is, you begin to question if that really is a possibility. Clemson, Auburn, at Missouri, at Texas A&M, Florida. I mean, those are all of them, so difficult games. Clemson is probably a top 5 team at this time. A&M could be a top 5 team at the time. Florida, top 10. And then Missouri and Auburn, Missouri on the rise, and Auburn usually a pretty decent team in and of itself. We'll start off with this Texas A&M game. One thing I'm going to keep coming back to with a lot of these predictions is anytime South Carolina faces an elite running team, I get scared. Because again, the Gamecocks nearly gave up 200 rushing yards per game last year. Well, Texas A&M has one of the best rushing attacks in the country. And one of the best running backs in the SEC in Isaiah Spiller. Doesn't bode well for the South Carolina defense. Keep in mind that Texas A&M won 48-3 last year over the Gamecocks. There's no 45-point swing, not with the game being in College Station. And let's also mention that Texas A&M had the second best rushing defense in the country last year. You shut down Kevin Harris. I really feel like you shut down the South Carolina offense. The Aggies can do just that. South Carolina 4-4. Not a bad mark going into your bye week, though. Again, still optimism here. They come out of the bye to take on Florida. Now, this to me is a major trap game for the Gators. Florida is coming off a game against Georgia, one that we had the Gators losing, maybe a little hungover after that world's largest outdoor cocktail party, maybe too many cocktails. They're going to be hungover after that. And South Carolina's coming off a bye. They're rested. They've recovered. South Carolina lost by 14 to Florida last year, 38-24. So, all things considered, a respectable showing against one of the best offenses in the nation. But kind of like I mentioned with Kentucky, kind of like I mentioned with Texas A&M and some of these rushing attacks, Florida's rushing attack, I think, simply might be too much in this game. I think Dan Mullen wakes up. They can afford to lose this game because at this point, Florida could already have 2 or 3 losses. I don't think they're going to drop this game in Columbia. I think the Gators' RPO-style offense with a dual-threat quarterback in Emory Jones and then their duo of Dameon Pierce and Malik Davis in the backfield is ultimately too much for South Carolina to handle, as their rushing and defense still, to me, is a major concern. Florida wins this game, but it's close. Do not be surprised if South Carolina pulls off this upset or they take the Gators down to the wire. But I still think they lose this game. I do think they fall to Missouri. They fell to the Tigers by 7 last year, 17-10. And kind of like the Tennessee game, I think these two teams are relatively even. I think they each have I think they match up well against one another, where no team is going to blow out the other. But the game is in Columbia, Missouri, not Columbia, South Carolina. And the Tigers did show flashes of brilliance last year. I think Connor Bazelak, another year under his belt as a starting quarterback, home field advantage playing a key role. Eli Drinkwitz being able to implement his defense now that was suspect at times last year. All those things combined, I think Missouri has a better showing this year than they did last year. I think they beat South Carolina by at least 10 in this game. Not 7, but at least 10. So the Gamecocks have now dropped 3 in a row, and if they want to go bowling, they have to win out. They have to win their final 2. Both coming at home, though. Problem is, they're against good teams. The Auburn game is another one of those tricky trap games here. Remember last year, South Carolina upset the Tigers. They beat Gus Malzahn in Auburn 30-22. Fantastic defensive performance from Will Muschamp and his Gamecocks. It's amazing. Will Muschamp's gone. Gus Malzahn's gone. It's now Brian Harsin versus Shane Beamer. So completely different coaches, completely different teams, but the same exact location. South Carolina, again, won that game 30-22. I do think that this defense for South Carolina can hold their own. But again, I do question, can they stop the run? Because Auburn wants to run the ball. They have a dual-threat quarterback in Bo Nix, who's hit or miss sometimes. He was miss against South Carolina last year. But they also have Tank Bigsby, one of the best running backs in the country, one of the best running backs in the SEC. And again, I question South Carolina's rushing defense when you face such a run-heavy team in Auburn. The Tigers, yes, lost last year. A bit of revenge on their mind. Let's keep that in mind. I think the Tigers have enough to come in here and get this win. I think their defense has improved. And I'd like to venture to say that while I don't have much faith in Bo Nix, that maybe Brian Harsin can get a little bit more out of him than Gus Malzahn did. The Tigers get revenge barely in Columbia. South Carolina now cannot go bowling. They play Clemson. Big-time rivalry game. Didn't get to play them last year. They get to play them this year, but we don't have them beating the Tigers. We do not have. They actually end the year facing 3 straight Tigers in Missouri, Auburn, and Clemson. But the Tigers of Clemson will simply be too much. South Carolina has lost, 6 straight? Only one of those 6 games coming by 1 possession. Clemson returns 10 starters on defense. DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. The Tigers at this point could be undefeated and will certainly be in the thick of the college football playoff hunt by the season finale. And South Carolina, despite having home field advantage, despite it being senior night, simply isn't going to have enough, regardless of how much swag and energy that Shane Beamer brings to the table on November 27th. So with that being said, we have South Carolina going 4-8 in 2021. I know my South Carolina fans out there, I know you're going to hate to see this. Don't kill me. But obviously it's going to be a very tough year. And again, you look at some of those toss-up games. I view Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, and Auburn, all games that South Carolina has a chance of winning. 3 of those coming at home. The Tennessee game on the road, we gave Tennessee the edge because of home field advantage. And when a game to me is that narrow, one play could totally change that game, could totally change that outcome. We have them at 4-8. A bowl game is feasible with this schedule. It's difficult, but it is feasible. But I think the Gamecocks are a year away from that. I think they still need help at quarterback. I think they still need help at wide receiver. They certainly need help in the defensive area, especially in the secondary. Shane Beamer is the man, guys. He's going to do great things in Columbia. Just give him time. Just give him time. Not going to show up in year one necessarily. Promise in year one. Promise in year one. Success in year two. So guys, again, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in that description below. Make sure to sign up for the Expert Picks today before the season starts over on thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for PrizePicks down in the description below. Do not miss out on either of those offers. And again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.